Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after, well, a game the likes of which you are never, ever going to see again in your lifetime. How do I know that? Well, it's already a game unlike anyone has ever seen in their lifetime. The latest tied-up Game 7 in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Absolutely ridiculous. If you were in that building, you know that it was bonkers. It was crazy. The whiteout at the worst of times is an absolute sight to witness, feast for the senses. The way that place went off the charts when the Winnipeg Jets tied up that game with 2.2 seconds left on the clock. There's one thing, and I make this comparison properly. There's one thing that I've covered in my life that would be as what's the word you want to use, as epic, as unbelievable as what we saw there, and that would be the Tom Brady come from behind in the Super Bowl. I mean, because it's the Super Bowl, because it's the actual championship, you hoist the trophy afterwards, it probably trumps this. But the reason I bring it up is because what you're seeing in that situation in the Tom Brady comeback Super Bowl is you are seeing probably the greatest football player of all time, the most clutch football player of all time, pulling off an absolute miracle, even for him. But there's a reason Tom Brady keeps pulling off these miracles. There's a reason he keeps doing these things. And that reason is he's just a next level player, right? Like he's just got ice in his veins. He knows how to handle these situations. When the biggest moments of the game arrive, he's ready to handle them. And that's why I bring up this comparison, because this is not a fluke, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a fluke. And there are parts of it that were fluky. Jim Montgomery talked about it afterwards. Nikolai Ehlers fanning on the shot, and that shot just happening to go directly to Adam Lowry, who's able to get it back to him. There's probably a little bit of puck luck involved in that, no doubt. Hockey gods definitely put their thumbprints on this game. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. We'll get to it. But you do not get to the point where the Winnipeg Jets pull off what they did in that game, pull off the tie, pull it off in the manner that they did, if you don't have an unbelievable level of belief. And you don't pull it off unless you have an elite level of composure. And I'm just going to touch on this play, and then we'll get into that. I'm not even going to touch on overtime and what happened after that, or any of the other parts of the game. I'm just going to say this. That moment when Nikolai Ehlers fans on the shot, the clock is winding down. They know there's not much time left on the clock. The clock is winding down, and imagine this. Under 5 seconds left on the clock. You're playing a game that all the pressure rides on it. You are this close. You're 5 seconds away from being knocked out of the playoffs in a disappointing manner that is going to send you into the offseason questioning everything that's gone wrong, all your belief, all these kind of things. And Nikolai Ehlers fans on the puck, and he gets it back. What do you think the instinct of every person, player, athlete would be thinking in that moment? You tried to get the puck to the front of the net and you failed at it, and you luckily got a second chance at getting that puck, and time is ticking down. Almost any player in that situation, I'm talking some of the game's elites, almost any player is taking that puck and firing it straight at the net, just trying to get it there and hoping for the best. And instead, Nikolai Ehlers in that moment goes cross ice over to Kyle Connor, who is waiting, composed, and ready to go to one-time that as a pass over to the middle of the ice, where Cole Perfetti is waiting and in spot and redirects that into the back of the net. The Jets do this because the Jets have been a team that we've seen them do this. How many comebacks have they had this year? Doing the right things, playing the game the right way, all those things that we've talked about it. This is who the Winnipeg Jets are. The Winnipeg Jets showed us who they were in the regular season, and they now were able to take that and translate that and still be that team in the postseason. And that's why the Winnipeg Jets are moving on in an absolutely miraculous fashion. Just bonkers. Nothing else to say, just bonkers. I can't add any more to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have our main man, Ken Weeb, walk in here, and he's going to add to it. The man with the best music in the business, who's going to have to cue his own music. Hit it, Ken, whenever you're ready. And if Ken can't do it, then I guess I'm going to have to do it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Ken is supposed to be in here. Ken, if you can add yourself to the show, there you go. Thank you for thanks for taking part, Ken. Thanks for chipping in. Just so that the folks know what's going on here. Of course, in the greatest, maybe the greatest Jets game we've ever seen before, my computer has conked out and is not working. So I'm doing this off my phone. I won't have the controls. I won't be able to share with you folks your comments and bring those kind of things into the show. I apologize for that. It's just the way it goes. Everything has gone banana lands in Winnipeg, and my computer seems to have been shorted out by the electricity that the Jets brought on this night. What hasn't shorted out, though, is obviously the sense of style that I'm rocking here. A Vittorio classic that I absolutely love, this bad boy. This is the one I've said in the past, and I don't know what's going on with Ken. I'm the one who's supposed to be having technical difficulties. I don't know why he's popping in and out of the show. But this one, if you remember, Josh Morrissey had a suit that was very similar to this. And I'd said, hey, I want to look like Josh Morrissey. And Vittorio Rossi knows exactly how to get it done. So if you have someone specifically you want to look like, maybe you want to look like Renny, maybe you want to look like Kenny, maybe you want to look like Josh Morrissey. I don't know who it is, but I can tell you, you can head on down to Vittorio Rossi, tell them what you want to look like, and they will do you up right. Ken, bonkers, absolutely bonkers. Just take it away. Take it away.
Sorry about that, buddy. My headphones got knocked out here and I was having some issues there. Sorry about that. Crazy game. It's the day of technical difficulties. Let's go. Yeah. That's the way we go. Good looking suit, by the way. I got one of the new Frankie specials on today too. It was a big game. You got to dress for success. So success today was making deadline just barely. There was, not going to lie, there was a potential obituary that was about halfway done, just in case the game went the other direction. And that's kind of one of the deals when you're in the journalism business. But that one got crumpled on the editing floor, and the narrative changed. We've talked about this all year long, Sean. Narratives needed to change around the Jets, and the only way they were going to change the narrative was by winning a first-round matchup. We know the Blues were an incredibly tough out. They were not a 8th seed. They went, I think Jim Montgomery told us, 19-4-3 after the Four Nations face-off. And they gave the Jets every single thing they could handle. Yeah, I mean, we know that the Jets have a Game 7 victory in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs against the President's Trophy winning team. But Sean, in terms of the flair for the dramatic, you're not going to see that again. Another team may do that at some point, but that was just incredible theater, incredible drama. 2 goals at 6-on-5 with the goalie out in the last, minute 50, right down to the wire, to the 156. Last goal coming with 2.2 seconds remaining. And as you mentioned, I mean, yes, was there some element of luck involved? Yes, of course. Nikolai Ehlers fanned on his shot, like you said. But you know what else Nikolai Ehlers did? He made a cross-ice pass that very few people in the NHL would A, think about, B, attempt, and C, complete, all in the span of time with fewer than 5 seconds left on the clock. Kyle Connor hustled and got his one-timer directed towards the net again. I don't know that he saw. I assume he saw Cole Perfetti in that area, but that's just an exceptional, desperation play. But as you mentioned, the play happens because of the calmness attached to it. 6-on-5 goals have been a big strength for the Jets this year. Jim Montgomery talked about the Blues allowing far too many 5-on-6 goals, but the Jets have done this with fair amount of regularity, which is why they stayed calm in that situation. And man, I mean, Cole Perfetti, what a game for the
Yeah.
ages for him. Kyle Connor, absolute clutch performance again. Again, not to pile on to the good folks in the United States of America, but if you're involved with Team USA, Sean, and you watch this series, you are kicking yourself for not having Kyle Connor in a championship game. 2 game-winning goals, set up 2 others. So I understand that a lot of people
Hold
think
on.
about clutch.
Before we go too far, he also owned up to being majorly responsible for the first 2 goals
For
of the game, which a lot of people at
sure.
US hockey would say that's exactly the kind of reason that he was not in that game. Continue.
Hey, like I said, in 4 wins, he had 2 game-winning goals and set up 2 others. I mean, that's a pretty good resume. Yes, he had a couple puck management issues in the first period for sure, but this is a guy that comes up big in big games, and he did so again. Lots of guys came through with big games, Sean, and we'll dig into each and every one of them. But yeah, well, I mean, this is something that we will remember for a long time. Like for people who grew up watching the Jets, the only thing remotely close to this, Sean, is Dave Ellett in, I think, double overtime in Game 4 against the Oilers. Right? This is the only thing that's the only thing that's close in the 1.0 NHL history. But this is a Game 7, and this isn't the Jets talking about which goalie was started by Bob Murdoch in Game 7. This is the Jets advancing in Game 7 and moving on to go up against the Dallas Stars in what should be an incredible series. I love that you referenced the 28-3. I mean, that's a crazy comeback. The only thing I've witnessed, I mean, I obviously watched that game on television, but for me, the only thing I've seen close to this live is the Minnesota Miracle. Case Keenum to Stephon Diggs. Diggs touchdown, unbelievable. One of Joe Buck's best calls of all time. But that included the defensive back completely whiffing on the tackle on a Hail Mary. So this was not a whiff by the defense. It was a greatly executed play, and
Unbelievable.
yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. So, anyways, that's the enough at the buffet. We'll dig into all kinds of other fun things, including a defense core that absolutely was exceptional. Neil Pionk, ridiculous, Sean, ridiculous to the tune of 45 minutes and 46 seconds, 58 shifts for Neil Pionk in this game in double overtime. 3 helpers, 4 shots on net, 8 shot attempts, 6 hits, 3 takeaways, 4 block shots. And Dylan Samberg, the human play killer, we're switching Slavian or Slavinesque to Samberg-esque with his 54 shifts and 44 minutes of ice time, 3 shots on net, 11 shot attempts, 2 hits, 1 block shot. Just a
Zero mistakes. Zero mistakes.
incredible effort. And there's a lot of other people on the defense core that I want to talk about, and we'll dig into that in a minute.
Okay, before we start getting into the very specifics of players, because we'll have to talk about Cole Perfetti, we'll have to talk a little bit more about Kyle Connor. We're going to have to talk about Neil Pionk. We're going to have to, on and on, we're going to have to talk about Connor Hellebuck. There's a lot that we need to get to. I want to get to the significance of this, and I'm going to go first,
Sure.
and you can play off whatever I have to say here. But I was just on, I just did have a conversation with Ken Reed and Ivanka on Sportsnet afterwards. We had a little bit of a talk back. I like doing those things the most because you can just have like a free forum where they talk and ask questions, and you can kind of go in whatever direction you want. It's kind of like the Kenny and Renny show where we go in whatever direction we want, which is always, makes for a lot of fun. But the one thing that I brought up in that was I brought up, so I used the miracle comeback, the Tom Brady miracle comeback, there's another miracle comeback I'd like to bring in here, and that's the Red Sox, who killed
Sure.
a curse that had lasted for 80 some odd years or whatever it was. I can't remember. At one time, I used to be able to tell you exactly how many years it was. I forgot what it was. But if you don't know the story of the Red Sox, they hadn't won a championship, one of the most storied franchises in all of baseball since it was either the 32 or 20 in the 20s or something like that. And then in the early 2000s, I believe it was 2006 actually, or 2004, because it's the
4.
year Renny went to Ryerson University. I remember going and being there and
1918 also,
being in
sorry.
the, yes, yeah, 1918. And I remember being in the common room at Ryerson and watching this comeback and thinking like, I think they're going to pull this off. And that ended up being when the Red Sox finally ended up going on and slaying the playoff ghosts that had haunted them for going on 100 years. I can't read it. Sorry, Ken. It's all too
Oh, sorry,
small for me.
86 years since 1917. Sorry.
There you go. Excellent job. Thank you for the poll, folks. But to me, what happens is all those years, all those playoff ghosts, the Bill Buckners, all the things that had happened over the years that just made it seem like you just could not get to the next level if you were the Boston Red Sox, and they slayed it. And they slayed it in that moment because they took the big bad Yankees and they took something that should have been impossible and they pulled it off. And once you've pulled off the impossible, I think what happens is your playoff demons, your ghosts, whatever they are, you slay them. Because what happens at that point is that you essentially can't help but believe. There's no reason to not believe. You have survived death. The Jets survived death on this night here, and they survived it in a way where what could have happened to the Winnipeg Jets on this night as the clock was winding down is in their head. They could have been thinking the same thing. I know tons of you were thinking, tons of you messaged me. A lot of the people in the crowd were all thinking this. Here we go again. We win the President's Trophy and we end up out in the first round against the 8th seed. What is the matter? How come we can't get past this? Adam Lowry was asked about it after the game, Ken, and he'd said, you know what, we really don't think about it. It's probably nice, though, not to have to answer the questions. I think Adam Lowry is like as straight up a guy as you're ever going to meet, but I call bull. You know what, Ken? I don't buy it for a second that the Winnipeg Jets, to a degree, hey, they came out in this game and their head coach said, we were really tight at the beginning of this game. This is something, a hurdle that the Winnipeg Jets hadn't been able to get through. The Boston Red Sox pulled off a come from behind down 3 games, 1-4 straight to beat the Yankees. It shouldn't have happened. It did. And that changed that organization. It changed it from the organization that could not win no matter what it did to an organization that was one of the most successful over the last 2 decades that followed that. This, to me, has the potential for organizational change. And it's not that the Jets haven't been a good organization, but 2018, Connor Hellebuyck called losing to Vegas the unthinkable. 2019, they lose to the St. Louis Blues against the Montreal Canadiens. That wasn't supposed to happen. They knocked off the Oilers, and then you get swept 4 straight by the Montreal Canadiens, who probably wouldn't have been in the playoffs that year if it wasn't for the way that the Canadian division played in. And then you start looking good against Vegas, but your season fell apart. Then that happens. Then last year, you absolutely dominate Colorado the entire season and then get dominated on your way out of the playoffs. These are playoff demons that were playing on the minds of the Winnipeg Jets. This has the potential, like I'm telling you right now, mark this day on your calendar. It's the day that the Winnipeg Jets organization changed. They changed. They went away from that kind of inability to get there. Things like this are special and they start something special. And I'll just go and I'll say this and I'll let you kind of take away from this, Ken, what you think this has the potential to do for the Winnipeg Jets as an organization. But before this, I did not think that the Winnipeg Jets, I thought they were going to get past the Blues. You heard me say it. I expected them to get past the Blues. I didn't expect them to get past the second round, and they may not. But I have more belief now in the Winnipeg Jets than I've had for the entire, and yes, They were that close to being out, and they were that close to me going on a rant about all the reasons why I thought that they were going out. But this, to me, has the potential to slay ghosts, to free this team, to have them pursue exactly what they're capable of pursuing. And I'm going to say one other thing, Ken. Connor Hellebuck, again, started out, had a rough night here. I thought after that goal was scored, suddenly he seemed to be further out in his crease. He seemed to be challenging shots better. He seemed to have a different posture to him. He seemed to be more comfortable. I'm going to say this right now. Not only do I think that this slays the playoff demons that the Winnipeg Jets have had, I think that this finally unshackles Connor Hellebuck with whatever was going on with Connor Hellebuck and how the playoffs have just been a place that he could not get going. I think that changes. I think it changes with this. I think this moment, and it's not even the overtime goal, which we'll touch on, but for me, it's not even the overtime goal. It's the fact that they tie that game up the way they did. Even if they would have lost, Ken, I think this was a transformational moment for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think we're going to see it carried forward in all the ways that I suggested that it will.
Yeah, let's say that Connor Hellebuck got the pristine roofing wake-up call by allowing
Absolutely
2 goals in the first 4 shots in the game, and I'm not sure when the third one went in, to be honest, and it's fine either way. I agree with you completely. Hellebuck stood tall for the rest of the game, and he showed the type of determination that he has shown previously on multiple occasions, but not enough times in the postseason. He stood up. He stood up to be counted. He was not going to be denied. He was tired of losing to Jordan Binnington, and he made sure there were no other goals allowed, and that's why he got the pristine roofing wake-up call, and his teammates rallied around him. That's what I saw today.
Well, you know what that means, folks, and if you're able to, maybe I'll find this banner here. It's okay. I got it here. Yeah, that means it's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. If you can't wait for I'm cross promoting here. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Folks, give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be happy that you did. Organizational wake-up call, I think, and not in the way that, like, I think the Winnipeg Jets do a lot of things right, and I think that they've been doing things right all year. I just think this is that moment where they wake up from whatever spell was cast on them in the playoffs all those years ago when the Vegas Golden Knights turned things around on them. This is a different Winnipeg Jets hockey team, I think, going forward. And I will say, I said this, and I said it loud and proud on this podcast. I said it on a lot of the Sportsnet platforms. The Winnipeg Jets, as we knew them, that team, I'd said, I don't know. I'd said I thought that they were going to win against the Blues. And I said, but I mean, even if they don't, I think the days of the Jets kind of falling and not getting up were over. And we saw that in this series. We saw that in their pushback in Game 5. We saw that in Game 1, the way that they came back in that third period. And we saw that again here tonight. I think that was analysis that worked out extremely well, because that's what we've seen from this team. They're not that team. They're not that team that things turn for them, and they just don't know how to turn it back. They turned it back tonight. They turned it back in one of the most difficult circumstances you could possibly imagine in the playoffs, and that's why they're on their way to the second round. Another reason they're on their way to the second round would be, I'm going to start on the back end. After Josh Morrissey goes out, you touched on it, Neil Pionk, 43 minutes, I believe.
45, 46.
46 minutes. It's the first time, I believe, since Chris Pronger that a defenseman played over 40 minutes.
46-15, they updated it.
For 46-15, first time since Chris Pronger. And if you remember how they used to use Chris Pronger, it takes a special kind of defenseman. It takes a horse to pull that off. Not only did Neil Pionk put that much time in, he was fabulous, Ken, the entire time. Like, this wasn't a guy who was barely holding on. This is a guy who looked to be in control at every point of the game. Take it away on what you saw from Neil Pionk.
Yeah, just outstanding effort. I mean, we've seen Neil Pionk at various points, Sean, and you referenced that Oilers series. Absolute headache for Connor McDavid the year that the Jets swept the Oilers. Yes, they needed extra time in 3 of those games, but that was, up until today, that's the best we had seen Neil Pionk play. I think today's game was elevated from those games, even as good as he was in that, or as great as he was in that series. Just incredibly patient and calm. There were some shifts where he was playing on his offside, same as Dylan DeMello, but with Josh Morrissey going down with Sean, I think you and I are in agreement. It looked like a shoulder injury to me. I think it did to you also. We'll see what the severity is in the coming days. I think the Jets are not going to be, I think they're going to take Monday off and reconvene on Tuesday morning. Neil Pionk was an absolute animal in the game, Sean, involved all over the ice. He was pinching when the pinch was required. There was no recklessness to his game. The calmness that is required when Josh Morrissey, the best defenseman on the Winnipeg Jets, is not involved in the game. You need other people to elevate their game, and Neil Pionk was at the top of that list, especially offensively. 3 apples tall in this one, which, we talked all series about how the Blues defense, Sean, the Blues defense getting active. I thought Kelly mentioned on the pregame show, I think it was 6 goals, 17 assists, 23 points from the group. Jets were far behind in that stat for the majority of the series, but in the biggest game of the year, there's Neil Pionk with 3 helpers, including the shot that went off the leg of Adam Lowry for the series clincher at 16:10 of double overtime. I thought Pionk was just an absolute force out there, and he had lots of company, but he was absolutely tremendous in the game.
Well, my goodness, did it pay off to have signed the type of player that was able to do what he did on this night here. And hey, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Can't talk about Neil Pionk without talking about Dylan Sandberg, who, to the point you were making before, Ken, I'd like you to expand on that a little bit. But what I saw from him tonight was a mistake-free game under trying circumstances. Time and time again, you and I sat there, Ken and I sit beside each other in the press box in the playoffs. We take a break during the regular season just because the fighting, the elbowing, the biting and scratching can get to be a little bit too much at times. But we would just sit there and marvel at these slight, subtle plays he made time and time again. The right play every single time. Calm, cool, collected. The way that I think, there's the Jets didn't start the game very well. Their head coach said that. And I thought that while he was back there, you're looking for leadership out of your group. And we'll get to Cole Perfetti and the leadership that he's shown in the most crucial moments of this series here and this game. But at a time when the Jets were having a hard time getting going, a young defenseman who stepped up to the second pair this year that a lot of people did not expect came out and I thought was the most calm, cool, collected player on the Winnipeg Jets, and just absolutely a marvelous game out of Dylan Sandberg as well.
He was a force. His calmness in the defensive zone, absolutely spectacular. The ability to go D to D on a number of cross ice plays that weren't always having there were not a lot of massive lanes available for that. But I just thought his ability and the Blues attacked him, right? I mean, they go down the right wing boards a lot with either Bushnevich or Kyrou, Robert Thomas. I thought that he was just so, like you said, it was the subtleties in his game that are so impressive. I thought the patience that he showed in terms of the zone exits and his ability to find outlets, the safety valve nature of his game was absolutely phenomenal in this game, Sean. We talked about it last year. These are facts. Last year when Brendan Dillon went out at the end of game 3, Dylan Sandberg did not flourish in a second pairing role alongside Neil Pionk in that series in games 4 and 5. What did he do? He spent the entire offseason preparing himself for moments like this, Sean. And not only did he excelled, he flourished and he excelled under really tough circumstances. And as you mentioned, I mean, this is when Dylan, again, this is a topic for another day, but when Dylan Sandberg is preparing for his negotiation as a pending RFA, his agent will be referencing this game and this series for his ability to seek a well-deserved raise when it comes to his next deal.
Back up the Brinks truck is how someone put it. I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more with the idea of paying him. I think the Winnipeg Jets are going to have to take a look at this, and we had a little bit of a conversation on this show, Ken, where we talked about what you could expect to pay that player.
Right.
And hey, you know what? Kevin Shoveldayoff is not going to like this, me saying this, but I think this is going to have to be treated differently, right? Like, you're not going to look at the points and be like, well, you don't score points, you don't do this, you don't do that, right? Like, this negotiation is going to have to be handled differently, because I think this player is just scratching the. If you're seeing this now, Ken, imagine 4 years from now when Dylan Sandberg is just a seasoned vet, and you're seeing what you're seeing from him now, the calmness, the composure, the way he's able to slow the game down, the way he's able to handle a game in a situation like that. You add 4 more years of experience on that. Dylan Sandberg is going to be he already is. He's going to be a scary world-class defenseman. Maybe he'll add more offense as he goes along, but his value is, like we've talked before. Jacob Slavin asked, the Winnipeg Jets, I'm going to say this. If I were his agent, I would be demanding of a very, very lucrative contract. And if someone was saying to me, yeah, but he doesn't score points, I would just once again call BS, like I did earlier in the show, and say, listen, you know the value of this player, and you know that value doesn't show up in these stat areas that usually get defensemen paid. But this guy is a guy who is going to be crucial for your team. He deserves a massive pay increase. His agent should be asking for it, and the Winnipeg Jets should be getting creative with the numbers to pay him what is his due, because a player like this is someone that you want in the city of Winnipeg for a long, long, long time. I just wanted to touch on something here. It's been asked for. It's been asked for. Where do we have it here?
I got a couple stars. I got you.
If you got it, some people are asking for the headband. Okay, here we go. Storm Norm or Stoon Norm G. Renny, how about a headband breakout for Game 7? You have great headband hair, just begging for it. Break it out for the whiteout. Finger red number 1. Hey, you know what? Who am I to hear someone tell me I've got great hair and not respond to what they're asking for? So you know what that means, folks. Time to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. Just give me 1 second to cue it up here, folks, and let's go. Frankie and the boys would be so proud of me, Ken. I've got one that's actually matching the threading my shirt here.
We're learning. We're learning.
Done. Yeah, it's slowly. Both of us, extremely slowly. Okay, let's go to Cole Perfetti, because
hang on. We got to stay on the D. We can't finish the D without talking about Shen and Fleury.
Yeah, well, I know that you loved Fleury's game, so why don't you handle them as a pair?
Sure. I love the way the pairing played. Luke Shen had been on for a high number of 5-on-5 goals in the series. I think it was about 7. He played like a guy who has been to the Stanley Cup final and won on 2 occasions. He was a physical force in this game, Sean. But the thing that I loved about Shen's game, the 3 block shots, 7 hits, fine. Those were important. Loved the way he moved the puck. He played with patience. He was a physical force. But I love the calm and the poise that he played with. Not rattled, not overwhelmed by the moment. Very good. 27 and change. Hayden Fleury, absolutely exceptional. Best game as a Jet. Looked like the guy from pre-injury in Toronto, Sean. Absolutely using his feet to get up ice, to defend. Physical also. Loved Fleury's game. 47 shifts for 32-33. 1 shot on net, 2 shot attempts, 4 hits, 2 block shots, and playing a smart game. Involved offensively. Patience in overtime. made a bunch of super smart plays, defended incredibly well. He showed like a guy who wants to be in the game one lineup, and I'll be shocked if he's not in the game one lineup against the Dallas Stars on Wednesday. This is coming out party is not really fair because I thought that Fleury had a strong almost a full first half before he got hurt. Yeah, I mean, there were some nights where playing top 4 minutes was not optimal, but this was an outstanding game and an outstanding effort for Hayden Fleury. Those two guys together were dynamite.
Just on and on. The way that he was moving the puck up the ice, the confidence that he walked into that lineup and played with, like that, let's just say this: it's one thing to be a guy who steps into a lineup when he doesn't play very often in the regular season. That's hard. It's really hard to do. He's done it with aplomb throughout the year. Sorry, I just threw myself
No,
off
it's okay.
using the word
Last
aplomb.
game that he was used in the series when he got inserted, 12:58, Sean, 12:58 to 33:02,
Right.
in a game 7. Barely played down the stretch. Just an exceptional effort.
So to go back to that, it's one thing to come in after not playing very often and be successful at the NHL level. It's another to do it later in the season, right? When you're getting closer to the playoffs and you have to step into that pressure cooker. It's another thing entirely to do it when you come into the playoffs, when you've been, sitting and now you got to come in, you've got to perform. It is next level, as crucial as it gets to bring someone into a game 7 like that and ask them to perform like that. Luke Shen, who some people had been deriding for his performance so far in some of the games in this series, came and had his absolute best game of the series. That's what you want. You want people who go out and at the most crucial of moments raise their game. And then let's not forget Dylan DeMello as well. Let's just do a whole coverage of the defense, because Dylan DeMello went along, and there's a lot of people out there that will try and tell you that Dylan DeMello is just a really good fit as a partner for Josh Morrissey. And Dylan DeMello showed tonight that when you lose the best defenseman off the back end for the Winnipeg Jets, he's just as effective out there. Absolutely phenomenal. You know what I loved about him afterwards, Ken? After they won, and people were celebrating on the ice, he kind of went around and was celebrating with fans. And I loved that moment.
Saw that.
Dylan DeMello loves being in Winnipeg. He loves the fans. He loves the whiteout. I love the connection that happens with players and the fan base. And he's a guy that I noticed, it stood out to me that he understood what that moment meant to the people. I mean, Ken, there are people crying in the stands, okay? Yeah. There's people, this is a literal dream come true for them in this moment. I think Dylan DeMello very much got that, took some time out of his energy to take a break from his teammates and celebrate it with the fans, who were everything tonight. The whiteout, holy smoke,
wow,
shivers up and down your spine. And this is before they tied it up. The whiteout was, and hey, it's interesting. I was on a Sportsnet platform before this, and I said, I think this is the best version of the Winnipeg Jets 2.0 I've ever seen before. And I think that the whiteout now is at the peak of its powers that it's ever been. That's saying something, given the first playoff game we ever saw and the way that they were blowing the roof off the place just in the warmups. This is a different whiteout, Ken. I was talking about this earlier. It's a different whiteout. There's a confidence to it. There's I've said this before. Vegas, I felt, broke the whiteout, and what happened with the whiteout is it was I thought somewhat eerie for the Jets to play in front of at times against Vegas, against Colorado, because when things turned for the Jets, the place got quiet because there was a feeling of, oh no, here we go again. And talk about belief that the Winnipeg Jets had in themselves. There was a belief in the fan base and a belief in the whiteout that existed this year that I think helped drive that team going nuts down the stretch and not allowing themselves to be silenced and taken out of the game was something else. Absolutely something else. Okay, we've moved on from the defense. Great job by all of them. Like, commendable. The games of their lives for 5 of them. Unbelievable job. Let's move up the lineup and let's go to Cole Perfetti.
Incredible. To think that Cole had a stretch where, yes, it wasn't like last year, but it was close, right? I think this year maybe it was 14 games, but his ability to find himself, Sean, the prick Perfetti, I want to get under people's skin. We've talked about this a ton down the stretch. In the biggest games, Cole Perfetti played big. He got to the hard areas. Those two tips are absolutely all world. The redirection on the power play goal from Kyle Connor. Jordan Binnington never saw it, and it went right over his helmet, right over his mask and into the back of the net. Never moved until it was past him. That is elite level hand-eye. His body positioning and stick positioning, exceptional. The tip on the tying goal with 2.2 seconds left. Where is he? He's in the hard areas around the net, high slot, around the blue paint, where people cross-check you for fun. Incredible job by Perfetti. He was physical throughout the game, Sean, involved on the forecheck, making smart plays all over the ice, and absolutely coming up with, again, this is another guy who just had his best game as a Jet, and Cole Perfetti had a lot of great games down the stretch. He didn't have a better one than this one today.
I just wanted to bring something into what we're talking about here because we talked about, some of the people crying. Phyllis says, ask my hubby, I was crying. We needed this so badly as a city and a province. Now we have to win this game. Mrs. Renny got a hold of me during the game there. And think about this. Poor Mrs. Renny has to live in a household where her husband saps all the fun, like I try to do with you on the podcast here, all you folks at home. I try and sap all the fun out of this by being impartial and, sometimes going at people for rooting and being hypocritical because, well, the refs hate our team and they don't hate the other team and all these different kind of things, right? Mrs. Rennie, who has to live in a house where, if you like hockey, you can't get like overly excited about it. Mrs. Rennie, I'm going to say this, at one point wanted to get a Jets license plate. And I said, you can't get a Jets license plate. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. I have to be impartial. I can't be seen. I know it's your van, but if I'm ever driving it, I can't have someone point and be like, I knew it. I knew he roots for those folks. I'll let this slide, just like Phyllis. Mrs. Rennie got a hold of me at one point in the game when the time was running out there, about 5 minutes left. And she said, I just feel so bad for Winnipeg, she'd said. And what she didn't mean was not specifically the Jets players or the Jets organization. It was them. It was the fans. It was the city. It was the businesses. It was everything. Mrs. Rennie had a real heart moment there, and she sent that to me. And if you're looking for someone who may have turned the tide for the Winnipeg Jets by sending the right kind of vibes that her husband has tried to stamp out of her over the years, Mrs. Rennie sent that. Her heart was aching for all of you out there, and Mrs. Rennie sent that out into the world before I tried to crush it out like a cigarette, and it got through, I think, just in time for the Winnipeg Jets. So you all owe Mrs. Rennie, I don't know, a beer or something like that if you ever see her out somewhere. She was rooting for all of you. She was rooting for all of you. Me, straight down the middle, 100% impartial. Okay. In fact, I may even beat up on the Jets a little bit just to make sure you don't think that I'm anything but impartial. Ken, could you give a shout out to Sweet Lou, please?
For sure. Yes, sir. Give me 1 second here. For those who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
T. Will here says Mrs. Rennie is a strong woman. She has to be. She's married to Rennie after all. Hey, I'll tell you this, T. Will, even if I don't appreciate you, Mrs. Rennie will definitely appreciate a comment like that. I want
good burn. Come on, that's good. Solid quality burn, T. Will.
Whatever. Don't feed the animals, Ken. Here, I'm ready to hand out the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game. Michael Nardiello Nargiello says Perfetti has arrived. Absolute gamer tonight. I could not think of a stronger, more accurate comment here. This was Cole Perfetti, a young man who last year was not given the privilege of playing in the playoffs with the Winnipeg Jets. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not saying it would have turned out any different. Sorry, he was, yeah. Don't think it would have turned out any different. But Cole Perfetti, again, I talked about Dylan Sandberg, an absolute leader on this night. A guy who went out and has pulled off 2 plays, the likes of which seasoned veterans will miss quite often. Hey, Ken, there was a pass across to Pavel Buchnevich that he could have redirected into the net and put a coffin nail in this game that he was not able to pull off, that Cole Perfetti was. Pavel Buchnevich, a great player, wasn't absolutely on top of his game tonight, but where he wasn't, Cole Perfetti was. Unbelievable. And that for sure is your KNR Hot Take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort is soon moving. You will find it will be one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort, and they will take care of it for you. Ken, I wanted to talk about this because I love talking about stuff that we get absolutely right, especially the stuff that a lot of people don't see. We talked about the chess match that was going to exist, or that the Jets were going to have to take part in when it came to dealing with Monty. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about how that chess match made things look when the series shifted games 3 and 4. We talked about Scott Arniel and the job that he did responding to those chess moves for game 5 and the bounce back that we saw from Monty. And even tonight, I thought Monty, my takeaway you heard from me over the last show was I thought maybe the Jets would have the advantage in this game because they would have to respond to what St. Louis did in game 6. And that kind of gives them, they haven't had a look at this, but it was Monty who had his team come out and be the better team for the first half of this game, I would say. And then it was the late adjustments made by Scott Arniel that got the Winnipeg Jets going, that got them looking like what they'd looked like all year. They got back into the muscle memory of what they'd pulled all year. But it's a way of me talking about unprompted. It wasn't a question by you. It wasn't a question by me. Jim Montgomery came out and talked about the chess match that had existed, the back and forth between his coaching staff and Scott Arniel's coaching staff, and how much fun that was, how challenging that was, how that marked the series. Scott Arniel talked about it back and talked about exactly what you and I have talked about on this show before. When you're making adjustments, you're not changing your system, but you are tweaking your system. That's the trick. That's the balance. You've got to be yourself. You've got to do the things that makes you good, but you also have to be able to tweak and change things slightly to stay within your system, but to counteract what the opposition team is doing to challenge your system. I wanted your takeaway, Ken, from hearing those two coaches talk about each other, the respect they had for each other, and the chess match that they engaged in that led to such an unbelievable series between these two teams.
Yeah, before I launch into that, why don't you tell the folks at home what you told me at the end when the buzzer sounded at the end of the first period?
What's that?
About Scott Arniel, what he needed to do in the intermission.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's what I'd said. Like, that if you saw the way that the St. Louis Blues were playing, and again, we love to assign the idea that the Jets just aren't trying very hard, or they're nervous, or this or that. And I'm sure that plays a role. But you could see there were structural things that were happening that was allowing for the Blues to have free-flowing hockey. They were getting out of their zone. The Jets weren't getting out of their zone. They were turning over the pucks easily. And I said, Scott Arniel needs to go in and he needs to have the intermission of his life where he and his coaches get in there, figure out what's going wrong, and relay, come up with a plan, which he talked about, and you can dig into that. Come up with a plan, relay it to your players, get your players on board with it. And sometimes what that looks like, folks, is exactly what it looked like for game 4 for the St. Louis Blues. Game 4, after they ran the Jets out of the building, game 4, the Jets were the better team for the first period and a good chunk of the first half of the second period, and then everything changed. Why? I contend the Blues went in the intermission and made changes, and those changes don't take like that. It takes some time for the players to figure their way through the system. What did we see tonight? We saw a dominant first period by the St. Louis Blues. We saw that somewhat, we saw them kind of the Jets turn things for the first 10 minutes, and then the St. Louis Blues turned them back. This is the chess match. They go up 3-1. But what happened in the end was Scott Arniel came out, put up the game plan in the second intermission for the third period. The Jets got to looking maybe their most dominant that we've seen from them this entire series in that third period. And what you're seeing here was two guys outthinking each other, outthinking each other, outthinking each other. And Scott Arniel was the last guy to come up with the tweaks that the other guy could not figure out in real time.
Yeah, and the other part of that, Sean, is the shakeups on the lines, right? So what does Scott Arniel do? I mean, Scott Arniel had Vladislav Nemestikov bump up to the top line, and that top line delivered in game 5 on home ice for Winnipeg. What did he do today? The offense is struggling. 3 shots on net in the first period. He reunites a line, Sean, but not the line we expected him to reunite. He reunites Vladislav Nemestikov with Ehlers and Perfetti, and that line was absolutely excellent. Yes, Vladislav Nemestikov missed another glorious chance in the second period, but he delivered when it mattered. He put Adam Lowry not back with Niederreiter and Appleton. He put him up on the top line with Kyle Connor, and then mixed things up a little bit as well and put Velarde and Barron together. So there was a lot of shuffling around, moving around of the lines, and it really worked out well for the Jets. Scott Arniel did a great job there, and he helped calm down his team when they were seemingly a little bit rattled in that first period and fell behind 2-0. I thought it was great coaching again, and as we mentioned, we've loved the back and forth. I mean, Jim Montgomery, we've seen this. You and I saw it firsthand in 2019 after the Jets were bounced. We both covered that series between Dallas and St. Louis, and that was a Berube versus Montgomery chess match. Every player that entered seemed to score a goal. Today, the debate was, would it be Matthew Joseph? Would it be Alexandre Texier? Well, it's Joseph. And what does Joseph do, Sean? Oh, he scores the second goal after the turnover in the neutral zone. So, both coaches pushed a lot of the right buttons in this game. They deserve credit. And Sean, we know there was a bit of a war of words from two guys who are incredibly intense, but have a great deal of respect for one another. This is the beautiful part of our game. I love the fact that those guys not only shook hands, they embraced at center ice in the handshake line. And, Jim Montgomery sharing how he wished him the best moving forward. I thought that's a great moment. I know that, yes, we're trying to watch everything when these things are happening and it's hair on fire time with filing and everything. But I just thought that it was a really good moment from two really good people, Sean, two people who, circuitous roads, second chances, obviously, like we said, different circumstances. But I love Jim Montgomery's appreciation for the fan base. What Jim Montgomery did after taking over the Blues, exceptional. What Scott Arniel did taking over from Rick Bowness, also exceptional, worthy of praise. And, in a lot of ways, he needed this series win. Scott's a guy who lives in this community, loves this community. He didn't want to be spending the next 4 months answering questions about why the Jets were not able to get the job done in the first round again. And one of the reasons the Jets moved on was the plan he and his coaching staff put together.
I live for those moments. Like in sports, how I talked about Dylan DeMello and seeing that moment between Dylan DeMello and fans. I live for that moment, that embrace that happens between Monty, because what you're seeing there is a tension build up between two friends over the course of a series because they're both competitive. They're both going and doing what they need to do, and they're both in the middle of going at each other and coaching and trying to break the other's charges, so to speak. And in that moment, there's just that release there, and there's that respect. And I will say this just to add to the kind of the chess match kind of idea that we're talking about here. I was talking with Jacob Stoller before the series, and he and I were having a conversation, and we were wondering if Scott Arniel was the kind of guy who is going to be able to make adjustments, right? Like to keep up with a guy like John Montgomery. So not John Montgomery, Jim Montgomery. And what I had thought of was think back to that Florida game. You got run out of the rink by Florida. The next game you came, you had a better game plan. Those games were back to back, so it was a playoff kind of simulation. And what you saw from that was Scott Arniel's group came up with a much better game plan. The Jets executed and they won that game. So he showed that he could do that. I had said this, and I had said off the top of the show that I have more faith in the Jets than I've had all year after this. A lot of people would think that faith would be shaken. They just pulled out, losing a first round series against the 8th seed, right? Never mind the fact that I don't think that the St. Louis Blues are your traditional 8th seed. That was a really, really good team out there. But for me, one of the things that gives me more faith in the Winnipeg Jets is the idea that I do think Jim Montgomery went and poked a whole bunch of holes in the Jets system in this series. And I think that the Dallas Stars you're going to see are going to be a different team than you've mostly seen playing against the Winnipeg Jets this year, because they're going to dig into all of that happened in this series and see all the little trap doors that Jim Montgomery created, all the things that he opened up, all the things that he had working for them, all the ways that he challenged the Winnipeg Jets and their system. But the one thing that gives me faith is, and I'd said this before, I wasn't sure if the Jets were going I thought that the Jets were going to beat the St. Louis Blues, but I also thought that Jim Montgomery would put out a very good blueprint on how to handle the Jets' suffocating system. And I was right on both accounts. The Jets end up winning, but the St. Louis Blues have painted a very strong picture of how to challenge the Winnipeg Jets. What does that look like? Well, you didn't really get to see the Jets look like what they looked like during the regular season, that dominant team that would just go in a roll. Think about the last time they played the Dallas Stars. It was just complete and utter domination, and there was really no answer for it, okay? I think you have to put the idea of the Jets looking like that for entire games aside. Maybe it'll happen here or there, but you don't get to be that team that you were in the regular season. And this is the reason why, because other coaches dig in and they create blueprints. There's a blueprint created on the Jets. The reason I'm not here saying, well, there's a blueprint that's created for them and now they're in trouble, is because Scott Arniel has shown time and time again in this series, sometimes it took a little bit of time, but that he was able to figure out a way to close up the holes that Jim Montgomery punched into his system, and enough so that at the very least, Scott Arniel is going to be able to give his team a chance and not be fully and completely exposed, have his system fully and completely exposed to the detriment of the Winnipeg Jets. Ken, we got to get to some of our other stuff here. Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
There were a lot of good candidates in this one, Sean, but going with the Dylan DeMello clear. It was Jake Neighbors. There was a clear shot, kick out, rebound. It looked like Neighbors had an open net. DeMello got there first and made sure that the Jets kept kind of control at a time when they needed to.
There
were a bunch of other ones.
There was maybe a Pionk stick lift
also,
on Buchnevich in that.
Oh, sure. Sorry, backdoor there. Yeah.
So that may be a good one. Regardless, plenty, like you had said, of examples of Johnson Group got you covered plays of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. That is the Kenny and Renny OGs, the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. And that brings us to our TCB lamplighter. Ken, what was the goal of the game for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's temptation to go Lowry because of the circumstance, but the Lowry goal can't happen without the Perfetti second of the game. So for me, just the cojones it took for Nikolai Ehlers to make the pass.
Unbelievable.
And again, for folks, go back and watch the replay, please. This is not a mistake. Ehlers meant to do this. Braden Shen is in proper position, but he isn't expecting the pass to come because there's no lane there.
Yeah.
Yes, so he's in the right position. This is not a player out of position. There is not a big window to get that puck through. Nikolai Ehlers got it through. Kyle Connor got it through to the front, and Cole Perfetti tipped it home for, again, one of the most memorable goals in Jets history. That's why I'm going with that one.
Balls of steel, ice in their veins. I'm telling you right now, this is a goal that I believe we will look back on and say the fortunes of the Winnipeg Jets as an organization turned in this moment in time. It's the kind of moment in time you will tell your kids or your grandkids or whoever that you were there for it if you were in the building. I think it is a watershed moment for the Winnipeg Jets. So how do you not make that the TCB lamplighter of the game? And hey, you don't have to. You don't have to do that like Ken and I did. Lowry's goal is perfectly suitable. Hey, Cole Perfetti's goal to start the game off the power play, that redirection is maybe the nicest redirect that's happened in the NHL this year. Just absolutely sickening. Tons of examples of that. Just like you can go get tons of examples of great beers, great food down at TransCanada Brewing Company. Share with us your lamplighter, your favorite goal of the game. And then while you're at it, head on down to 11290 Kenniston. Join them in their tap room where they've got lots of great beers on tap, great food, and a whole bunch of different kind of beers that you can buy in their beer store. Go check them out, folks. And that brings us to our keg save of the game. What do you got, Ken?
Well, how about the save by Hellebuck off Jordan Kyrou, just 40 seconds into the second overtime? There were a couple of others that were
Off the
big
stick.
ones also. But for me, I thought that was a big one early in the second overtime. It was another example of Hellebuck coming out of his net and challenging. Again, honorable mention to Jordan Binning's stop on the Nikolai Ehlers partial breakaway with just under 5 minutes to go in the first overtime. But to me, the ability for Hellebuck to rise up was on display early in the second overtime on that Kyrou stop.
So I'm going to give it to Jordan Binnington on the breakaway in that situation, or maybe even on the one that comes very close to going over the line, but doesn't quite go over the line. Listen, Jordan Binnington should get his due for how he played in this series. I think he was the best goalie in this series for every game but one. Game 5 is the only one I think that he was the second best goalie in this series. On this night, Ken, he was not going to be beat by goals that like by your typical goals. So what did it take? It took Cole Perfetti's ridiculous redirect, which leaves a goaltender absolutely helpless. Remind me, the second goal was. How come I'm drawing a blank on the second goal right now?
Nemesnikov.
Okay,
It's off
Nemesnikov.
Suter's skate.
Exactly. So that you're not going to save that. That one is a hockey gods goal. I mentioned it off the top. The hockey gods got involved. The Jets don't win this game without the hockey gods. That is a goal that he can't stop in that situation. The redirect in front by Cole Perfetti is a shot, is something that he has no chance on. And then it takes another redirect in front of the net by the Winnipeg Jets. You were not beating Jordan Binnington on this night with a regular shot. Give him his due, and do so if you need to. If there's a sour taste in your mouth for me asking you to do this, if you need to, do so just based on the idea that Jordan Binnington is Team Canada's goaltender, and what you saw from him, what everyone thought was going to be a failure for Team Canada, and at times, Ken, there were some soft goals let in by Jordan Binnington in that Four Nations before he kind of clamped things down towards the end. Other than Game 5, and I didn't even think in Game 5, there were no soft goals in this series. If you're Team Canada and you're going to the Olympics next year and Jordan Binnington is in net for you, you should feel very confident. The way that he played in this series and the way he's playing now behind a structured St. Louis Blues team, Jordan Binnington is back. The St. Louis Blues are back. And as a Canadian who would like to see Canada do well, just like they did at Four Nations, do well in the Olympics next year, it is comforting to think that a guy like Jordan Binnington, who played the way that he did here tonight, the way that he did in this series, will be the guy who is backstopping your country in that event. That's my keg save of the game. It doesn't matter what I think, though. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game. You'll automatically be entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our winner from our last show, and that would be Dorian Wasakase. Dorian Wasakase, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your name, full name, send me an email, and I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we go on? I mean, what is left to be said about a game like that?
Well, just quickly, because you and I were both watching it, you briefly mentioned the Stars, and man, I mean, we both were watching the Game 7 Saturday night, and as two people, and we've mentioned this before, and I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but as two people that saw Mikko Rantanen's, crowning moment, helping the Colorado Avalanche win the Stanley Cup in 2022, he just got a new entry into that, and as wild as today's game was for Mikko Rantanen, having a 4-point games in game 6 and 7, including one in game 7 with your team down 2-0 against the team you used to play for and helped win a Stanley Cup, to get a third period hat trick and set up the game winner from Wyatt Johnston. Absolutely sensational effort by Rantanen, by the Stars. We talked about Bennington. What a great goalie matchup. Jake Ottinger coming to town now, playing some of the best hockey of his career. Connor Hellebuck now finding his game. That's going to be tremendous. The one thing about the Stars, the fact they beat the Colorado Avalanche, a legit Stanley Cup contender that went home after round 1 with a heartbreaking Game 7 loss. They are getting Miro Heiskanen back at some point, we expect, and they'll also get Jason Robertson. We'll see about Game 1. And sorry, for the folks who are asking, Scott O'Neill didn't have an update on Josh Morrissey. We won't get one until Tuesday. We'll also see if Mark Scheifele's back on the ice. We know he was on the ice briefly on Saturday. I watched him. We'll see where things are at on that front. But man, Stars Jets will be a sensational series. 2 very well coached teams. Speaking of Flowers, Pete DeBoer 9-0 in Game 7s. Exceptional job there. Stars are a fun team to watch. So are the Jets. And sorry, we went this far without talking about Brandon Tanev. His best game since returning to the Jets, Sean. An absolute physical force in the game. The kamikaze was running around. What did he have? 10 hits, 4 block shots, 2 shots on net. Great effort by Tanev as well in the game.
Barron, throw
Absolutely,
Barron in,
yes.
who had an absolutely great game. Alex Iafallo was absolutely
tremendous.
phenomenal in that game. Like, you can go up and down the lineup. Didn't think it was the best game for Nick Ehlers, and yet it's his play. Like, yes, Cole Perfetti redirects that. Yes, the transfer that Kyle Connor has when he moves that puck over to Cole Perfetti is absolutely, world class. But that goal does not happen if it's because of if it's not for Nick Ehlers. Nick Ehlers gets the entirety of the Blues defense getting confused where it's going. And he does so with like absolute the stones to not just throw it at the front of the net, hoping for the best. He has like a very structured play that he starts the setup of there. So Nick Ehlers, not back in my mind to being the Nick Ehlers that we've seen in the past and know at the very peak of his game. And yet he found it in the most crucial of moments. And I thought Gabe Vilardi was absolutely great in the face-off dot. Like, we should just list off the entire roster and say bravo to the entirety of the Winnipeg Jets roster, because they were absolutely great. That's it. Ken, anything to say before we go?
No, you got it nailed.
All right,
thanks. That was fun.
Close this down. That was fun, and I hope it was fun for all of you. What time is it? Almost 1 a.m. here. We have 650
over
people.
700 for the
topped up for
show.
around 800 there. That was great. Thank you for being there for us, folks. We hope this is one of those times. I hope that we did that game justice with our breakdown, because I gotta say, it's one of these moments where we just got to witness an absolute work of art, and just hoping that we reflected that in the tiniest of ways in what we did talking about this game here tonight. I hope we did that, and if we did, I hope you appreciate it. And if you do appreciate it, I'll say this: if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, we would implore you to appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space for us. That's Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, TransCanada Brewing Company, and of course the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you for being along for the ride. Let's start it up all over again, folks, Wednesday, when the Winnipeg Jets take on the Dallas Stars in Game 1 of Round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.